All right. Hello.
How are you?
Hello from my basement again. I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Little
Yeah.
crazy. This is going to come in and I'm decided I'm not going to shave until we can get back to relative normalcy. So you may see me
I'm
down
gonna
to
enjoy seeing
here,
this beard grow over the next 3 months.
twisting and turning it. Hey, so let's do part two of our discussion. What do you say? Jump right into it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little snippet. A little snippet today. I wanted to talk about um, what I call managing your emotions more effectively in order to be more effective. And so I'll describe exactly what that means. But
Is
I
there an
wanted to
abbreviation for
reference.
that? Is it mostly like meh, 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 meh?
I mean, I'll come up with one probably. Emmy, Emmy, Emmy.
Right.
Manage emotions more effective to be more effective.
Right.
Me, me, me. There you go.
Right.
Me, me, me. Let's
There
call it
you go.
that.
I
All
love
right.
it.
I wanted to reference a podcast that Brene Brown put out recently that talks really well and understandably about this. And it's called Manage Anxiety, Calm, and Over Under Functioning.
I listened to it.
And yeah, did you? Okay.
I did.
And I love that she names the terms over and under functioning and describes what they are, because it is a reaction I already know very well in myself and that I see in other people and how they manage and cope with stress. But being able to give it that defined term is helpful, right? You're able to kind of tie it up neatly in a box with a bow and understand, okay, I'm over functioning right now, or I'm an over functioner, and this is what happens to me when I'm under stress.
Mm-hmm.
So the way she describes it basically is there's typically two types of people that manage stress. There's the ones that underfunction, they kind of shut down, or they take the vulnerable position, they maybe make irresponsible decisions, or they stop functioning, and everyone else needs to swoop in to help. And then there's the overfunctioners, which are the ones that, manage it outwardly by taking control, jumping in, trying to advise, to help, to manage other people and external things to avoid having to process and look inward. And I am definitely the latter of the two. And find it funny because she says typically first children. I'm not, I'm a middle child. But that was really helpful for me in reframing the way I look at how I manage stress as a manager and as a coach. And the reason I bring this up is there's a lot of research around anxiety being contagious, right? And I already know this. I know this inherently. I always tease about how when I grew up with my mom, she did not manage stress well. She would freak out. She was a bundle of energy and nerves, and everything was the end of the world. And I had so much anxiety as a kid that I thought I was like high maintenance, high, emotion until I went away to college. And I went states away and physically separated myself and realized I'm actually a really calm, laid back person. I had never known. I had never known how calm
Yep.
and laid back I was, because my mom and I did everything together through my dance career. She would be the one to take me everywhere. We're always running around. So there was always stress, and she was always anxious, and I was always feeding my energy. And I had that recently having my sister living here, because my sister responds in a similar way. And I had this overflow of dealing with COVID-19, my work pressure, trying to stay on top of things, managing my child at home, trying to manage my household with 5 new people in it,
Your
3 or 4 of which
pregnancy.
are under 5. I'm pregnant, and trying to maintain safety for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And this was just bubbling out of me. And it got to a point where I had this blow up with my husband, with Freddie, and I was kind of blaming him because he was super calm. And I'm like, why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. And he's like, you don't have to do any of those things, right? You're choosing to do those things. You don't have to respond that way. And when he's calling me on this stuff in the conversation, I am internally, the logic in me starts kicking in, because I'm a pretty rational
You
female.
are.
He will tell you that.
Yeah.
And the logic, and I'm like, I know he's right. And he's so why are you raising your voice? And I'm saying, well, I'm frustrated. I'm just really frustrated with you right now. He's like, I understand, but why are you raising your voice? Well, I just told you because I'm frustrated. And he's like, but does that help us solve the problem? Is that getting us in this conversation where we want to go? Because as calm as I am, my husband's like the chief of calm. Mm-hmm. And immediately I'm like, no, it's not. It's not helping me. As authentic as that is of a reaction, and as understandable as it is as a reaction with all I have going on, it's not helping us resolve the situation. And so it reminded me of this comment you made about like right versus being effective. And yep. I wanted to segue to you talking about that a little bit, because we get into these positions of, you know, firm defensive stance of like, well, I feel right and justified in how I feel and justified in responding this way. But there's that other side of like, yeah, but is it effective in helping you reach your goal? Is it going to change the environment for the positive? So I wanted to segue to you on that.
Oh, okay. It's hilarious that I was prepared for a lot of things. I don't know why I wasn't prepared for that. You may be right, but is it effective is a mantra I carry with me. And I've also sent you some other things that we'll read maybe at the end of this. You can read that quote that I sent to you. And I say all this, and you know this about me, those are things that I've struggled with. So I've had to practice just like you would dancing or a basketball shot or a golf swing. I've had to fix those challenges in me because inherently, and this is true, well, I've been right, technically right on a lot of things that I've seen. And I'm fortunate that for some things in work or in business, or even when I was a fireman, there are some things that we all have that maybe are innate skills or just experience allows us to observe faster. My reaction was always get the F out of the way because I know how to solve this better than you guys, right? Mm-hmm. And the example I can give you, are you right or ineffective, is a work one. There's a woman that works for me, and a few years ago, we were running into an issue with an employee that worked for her. And I had said, do all these things. Why? Because I'm 54 years old, 52 at the time. I had managed several people throughout my career. I knew exactly the right way that things are going. I could sense what this guy was all about. This is her first time managing people. She was 29 years old. And her style isn't my style. My style is, without question, much more aggressive. You're doing X, Y, and Z, less emotional. The emotion tends to lead me. And so she wanted to do this one thing in order to try to track where he was and see if she can get him back into being a good employee, or go down the route of having to let him go. And it was this long, drawn-out thing. Now here's the bias that was underneath all this stuff. I felt she was a far more passive-aggressive person than me, so I felt I was acquiescing to some need that she had that I felt personally was ridiculous. Get over yourself. We got to move on. He's a shit employee. Doesn't show up on time. The evidence is there. Just start documenting it, throw it in his face, and be done with it. We don't have time for this. Mm-hmm. So I called my coach. Said, I'm struggling with this employee. By the time she figures this shit out, more projects are going to be delayed, and I'm going to get mad at her. She said to me, you may be right, but are you effective? Right. So in taking my reaction to the circumstance, what I did, Hallie, is I sat down with her and I took this approach. I disagree with your approach, I said to her. I said, my experience tells me it's not the right approach. However, what I do sense is that you're not comfortable with mine. So let's find some place where we both agree. I'm concerned about the timeline. I just decided I'm going to be Brene Brown, vulnerable as shit, right? And not many bosses are comfortable doing this kind of thing. I'm concerned about the timeline, that it's going to get protracted. So we have to agree that if you can't solve this thing within 3 weeks, that feels ample time, because I think it's 3 weeks too long already. But 3 weeks is going to give you enough time to try to sort that through in your own methods. I'm fine with it. But after 3 weeks, we got to switch over to a more aggressive platform. It doesn't mean it's going to be mine, but we got to amp this up a little bit, because we can't keep going on with an employee who's not producing for 3 more weeks, because he hadn't been producing for 6 months. You know what she said, which is amazing? Ready for this? She said, thank you. And so I had to kind of let go of what was my personal drive to find something that was effective. And guess what ended up happening? Within a week, she said, he's not making it. And we ended up terminating this guy within a week and a half, but she had to do it in her own way. Is that kind of what you were getting at when it comes to these circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, you're tying actually in the theme that I brought up in a training for one of my clients yesterday in helping leaders become better coaches. And it's, being an effective leader is also about being able to take the personal out of it and know that you don't always have the answers. Your answers aren't always the right answers. And as a coach, your job is really to ask questions, to probe, to give alternate scenarios so that the person can choose their own path, because we learn through failure. We learn through making mistakes. And so she's going to learn much more through being able to go through that process with you and having that conversation with you and make that decision for herself and look back and say, you know what, I think Jack maybe was right. I think I did wait too long, but at least I got to do it in my own way, and at least I got to learn it. And it wasn't that he was forcing on me his agenda, right? Which leads me into my next point of why any of this matters. And the reality is that if this is our state, so let's assume that we have this stress and anxiety. We probably all have it because we're all quarantined and, like I said, dealing with the fear of safety, trying to manage ourselves working remotely, trying to manage our teams working remotely. If this stress and this anxiety is operating within us without us realizing it, and we go into either over-functioning or under-functioning levels without, again, realizing it, that lack of self-awareness is going to inhibit our ability to respond effectively and with neutrality. Because at the end of the day, if you're an over-functioner, like I am, your response to stress is to jump in and solve the problem, to take control and solve the problem. Now, for me, as a coach and a mentor and an advisor, this becomes a really big issue, right? Because my job is to guide and advise and help others navigate their path to figuring out how to make the right choices for them. If I'm in an over-functioning state of stress and anxiety, without realizing it, I won't be as effective because I'm going to be jumping in, and my advice is inherently going to be coming from that control reactive state and trying to solve their problem in the way I would solve it and just tell them what to do instead of one of thoughtfulness and strategy. And I had to be aware of that this morning because I had a mentee come to me with an employee issue that's similar to the one that your employee was facing with her subordinate. And because I've been able to be more aware of this over the last week, since having that blow up of like, how do I better manage my stress so it's not impacting my team, my family, people around me, I was able to take a pause and read through everything and say, you know what, I'm not going to respond right now. I'm going to come back. I'm going to think on this for about an hour and a half, and then I'm going to come back to her. And let's see if we can schedule a call for the end of day where I can actually be prepared to ask probing questions in the way that a coach is supposed to or a mentor is supposed to, as opposed to just jumping in saying, fire the person or reach out to HR and get termination started, right? Because that needs to be my role versus having this like unconscious thing coming out of me that I'm imposing on somebody else. So as managers, it's really important to recognize when we are dealing with stress and anxiety within ourselves, because without managing that, we cannot be as effective. And I wanted to last have you touch on the 4 A's you talk about with changing and managing emotions, because I'm giving all this theoretical, right? I'm just bringing awareness to how this can come into play for us. But at the end of the day, what we want is to provide tangible steps and tactics to help people manage these things. And I think your 4 A's do that beautifully.
Yeah, and first of all, before we go into the A's, I love what you just said. I think it's amazing because it really starts with, when we talk about the 4 A's, it really starts with 1 A first. That's really kind of weird. And when I went through my coaching and training and all this stuff, I didn't agree with this A. It goes acceptance, awareness, action, and adaptation. And I always felt awareness would come before acceptance. So I still struggle with it this day. Like I believe you should be aware that there's a change. And what my coaches would always tell me and trainers say, no, you have to accept the fact that something has to change. And then you have to be aware of what's going on to figure out the action. So it starts with accepting, like accepting the fact that, and when they brought it back to me, and it made more sense this way, was when someone goes through Alcoholics Anonymous, they're not aware first that they're alcoholic. They're accepting that they're an alcoholic, and then they're aware of their behavior that causes that. So that's how we have to look at it. You have to accept the fact that, and it starts with us. I mean, it really starts with us as managers. It really does.
That's all we can control.
Well, and again, there's so, well, we could talk forever. I can give you so many examples of, here was a moment where I wasn't accepting of things because I just wanted it my way. It may create very near-term successes. For example, as a former fireman, and I was talking about this before we got on this call together, as a former fireman and someone that had a decent amount of experience, right? I could, in some circumstances, say to firemen with less experience, grab the hose and go over there and do that thing, right? And so sometimes we're in that environment where maybe there's an urgent project with a client. I need you to get on the phone and do X and call the vendor up and cancel shipment or reorder shipment, whatever that thing may be, right? But we can't make the phone call ourselves. And so we have to be trusted. We can't, I think it's highly ineffective to say these words. I'm going to give you a script and say these exact words, because it just will never come off in the same way in which we would say it. So we, as managers, have to do two things. We have to accept and understand and be aware and take action and adapt our own limitations. And so if we're expecting someone to say the words in the same ways in which we would say them, it's never going to happen. You and I can't articulate the same things. We have different mannerisms, personalities, approaches.
Right.
We can only create
no longer authentic.
All we can do is create the foundation and allow that person to find their own path, as long as we get where we're trying to go, right? Yeah. And so acceptance is the first thing. Awareness then is, what are the things that you're aware of that you're doing that's creating that change that you want to make, and how can you maneuver it? And then comes action. What steps are you going to take to be different? The example I gave you earlier was an action step where I realized I'm getting nowhere with this employee if I try to browbeat this into her. Instead, I've got to try to find what makes it work for her in the context of our company can't suffer or endure much more of project work not getting done, right? As long as we agree to that, let her come this way and I'll arrive someplace else. As long as we get there in a time frame that makes sense. And then adaptation is just, how do you adjust and change? And so what I didn't do in an adaptation thing, an old me would have said to her, are you going to listen to me now moving forward? That's an old me. Okay. The adapted me, when she said, because she did say it, I should listen to you more often. I said, nope, you made the right choice. I said, it was good that we did this. I'll give you advice as you need it. I want you to know you can always come to me, no judgment. So I changed my own way of reacting, because my instinct was to say, yeah, F you. You had listened to me in the first place. That's my instinct. Right. So my adaptation as a manager was, I don't need to do that anymore. Right, which gets to the quote that I sent to you right before we get on. So anyway.
And where would that have gotten her and your relationship, right? She probably wouldn't have felt comfortable coming to you anymore if your response was like, yeah, I told you so and you didn't listen. But she's either going to have a fear response of like, is this the right response that Jack would have me do? If not, am I going to get in trouble? Is he going to be mad at me? Or there's a breach of trust and transparency because she wants to live and respond authentically to her and not feel forced or compelled to respond in a way that's authentic to you, right? So this not only affects us, it affects our relationships. And I came to you, I remember at one point we had a call when my sister was living here. It was like within the first week. And we have very, very different parenting styles. And, her children are wonderful children, but the two older ones are kind of like running amok in the house and behaving in ways that I find like really frustrating. And so part of me is, you know, this is my house, you know, if they're slamming my doors and taking things without asking after I've asked them not to, and they're not listening, like, to me, that's not how I raised my kid. That's like a pet peeve, right? But she's dealing with a bunch of other things that are stressing her out. And so we're approaching it differently. And the lack of approach, how I would handle it, that she had, is causing this like tension
Sure.
from me towards my sister. And I had to accept and have that we had different parenting styles. Again, start with acceptance, right? We have different parenting styles, and I cannot control how she parents her children. It's not my place, right? And then the next is like, well, what am I going to do about it? And I talked to my husband. I said, they're going to be here for 2 weeks. Are you okay with us just like letting it go? Because I don't think it's worth the strain on the relationship. And he's like, absolutely. You know, I just want them to have fun here. I want them to feel welcome. It's not worth the argument, right? It's such a short period of time. And that proceeded to lift a ton of weight off my shoulders and change the way that I was responding to those scenarios when they happened moving forward. And at the end of the day, it was kind of like, well, they're not mine, so it doesn't matter.
Well, and so what's interesting in that scenario, it's a great example. You accepted the fact that this was something bubbling inside of you, and what you were aware of and what your husband helped you become aware of as well was that the objective wasn't fixing your sister and her parenting, because it's never going to happen. And by the way,
Right.
there's no proof that you're doing it better than her, right?
No,
or she's doing better than you. So if that becomes the objective, you're going to run into a wall every single time. And what you were aware of was the objective was, let's get through this and let's maintain a relationship, because it's more important that I have a long-term relationship with my sister, because I'm never going to agree with her parenting because we're just different people. Just like you wouldn't agree with how she maybe cooks lasagna, right?
Yeah.
Only lasagna you don't have an emotional connection to, because lasagna doesn't make, right? Lasagna doesn't talk back.
Right.
But then your action was, I'm going to take a deep breath here and I'm going to relax myself. It wasn't a change on your sister. And maybe, I think along the way you might have talked to her or talked to at least your husband. And then the adaptation was you made some shifts in your own lifestyle.
Right. Exactly. And at the end of the day, you know, I have to have the humility enough to be aware that maybe she thinks I'm too strict, you know, like
right.
It's not about my way or the highway. But it really helped me. And again, going back to the 4 A's of change, like we can only control ourselves.
Right.
And it really helped me to manage my internal emotions, my thought process, my perspective on the whole thing. It lifted so much extra stress and frustration off of my shoulders. It eased the tension between us. And it allowed me to be a better sister, a better wife, a better mother, because I wasn't internalizing all of those things that were coming out in random interactions throughout the day. And so I actually think it's beautiful that we we talked about like how to make this title an acronym, which is manage your emotions more effectively to be more effective. Me. That's all you can control, right? Me. That's all you can control.
It is ironic that it actually works out that way. But that's, and it's interesting because we've dabbled in a lot of different topics, but being a manager is challenging. And I'm not a big fan, by the way, and I hope I'm not disrupting you in some way by saying this, of always comparing management to managing children, because I don't think that's fair. Because I always feel when I hear other managers say, well, at home I do this, well, but these aren't kids. These are adults you're working with.
Yeah.
And so it's a nuanced analogy that I just get uncomfortable with. However, I do think it's interesting that we're dabbling in here on all these different examples of how when we learn to manage our own emotions, we can get more productivity from a lot of different sources. So whether we have to manage our relationship with our spouse, your first example with you and Freddie, I'm going crazy and he's saying, what are you going to do about it? Is this the right way, right? That's managing your reaction and his assistance. You and your sister, managing your reaction. My example of work, managing my reaction. The theme, and that's why you're part of all this anyway, right? It's not just your work knowledge and your HR experience and all those other wonderful things that you do. The theme always comes back to humans. We're human beings. And so, and we're in a different environment now. And I just think this is something we have to accept. we're not at a, we're in such a service economy now. It's just, it is. We're not a manufacturing economy anymore, period. Doesn't mean we don't have manufacturing, but we're a service economy. And you're managing
Yeah.
more with people. So the question becomes, like we've talked about working from home and all those other things. What is the objective? Was your objective to teach your sister how to be a mom like you? Was your objective to get Freddie to be as angry as you? Because if that's your objective, it's so short term.
Absolutely.
Right? The objective is, I want to keep moving this forward. Was my objective to get my employee to manage like me? Of course it was at first. It was, I wanted her to do it the way I would do it. But the real thing was our projects were getting delayed and our clients were asking things were, and it could have jeopardized income. That's the real picture. And so the question is, as long as we all understand the bigger picture, there's multiple ways to go after that.
Totally.
And I know I probably sound a shit ton more calm than I really was in an earlier life. So anyone that's known me for a long time probably thinks I'm full of shit. But I think it's a great topic because that's what being a manager is all about. It really, when you talk about me, perfect acronym. I mean, it's so ironic that it worked out that way. But it does start with us, and it starts with us really listening. And by the way, it starts with us listening to ourselves. And that's not always easy.
No.
Because you're used to something working so well. Yeah, I mean, just because you're used to plowing through and tackling people and knocking down walls, you may be right, but are you effective? Look at the rubble you leave behind. So,
right.
You're awesome. You know how much I think you're fantastic.
Right back at you.
So for everybody listening, we're going to continue on this theme. Every week we've got these little snippets. I'm going to send a video link. I wish I could do it now. In the future, I'm going to make this a little bit more interactive, where I'm going to bring in some videos for us to think about. But when I post this on the site, I'm also going to post a video that I think you're going to find hilarious. And I'll sum it up by saying, sometimes us as managers, and I fell into this category for sure, try to do too much. And there's this really cute video. It's an insurance video, but it's of a dad teaching his daughter how to ride a bike for the first time. And you're going to laugh your ass off. Anyone watching this video and then watching the subsequent one that I attach, you're going to laugh too. So I'll attach it in the comments, but I think you'll be able to link to it. And do me a favor, not just for everyone watching, but please add your own comments to what I post so that we can continue to inform people, because this is a challenging, sorry for soapboxing a little bit, this is a challenging time for a lot of us. And it's
yeah.
For you and I, working like this is not a big deal. We're used to working independently. We're used to working remotely. We're used to traveling as running what we run. For some people, this is crazy new. For a lot of managers, crazy uncomfortable. Staffs of people they used to see, they're not seeing anymore. So
like I've mentioned, I didn't start that way. It was a hard transition for me too. So I empathize. I get it.
We're going to keep talking about these work strategies. Yep.
Yeah, I want people to feel like they can engage in these discussions, if they have insights or things they want to add or challenge or questions.
And I'm gonna post,
we can keep going.
Yeah, I'm gonna post to the group the fact, I've fixed some technology things for us so that we can do this live. So I'm gonna post maybe a day that you and I think we can do it live together, and so we can get some people to engage with us, because we'll be able to see comments and questions. I'd love to have a Q&A about the changing work environment and have you be involved with that. So, because I think you'd be awesome, and I think people would like to throw some questions out at you too. Okay.
Awesome.
All right, you've got this down. Ready?
Peace.
Look at you. Hey. I love the fact that you always do this, and then you always check it.
I have to check it. I'm always going to give you the middle finger.
And your index, right?
I'm going to do this.
But hey, if you want to do that, I get it.
Or what is this one? Is it
that's hang loose? That's the Hawaii.
Hang loose, yeah. That's what I always want to do too.
And if you want to throw the middle finger up, I was on a call earlier today using Zoom for work. And there was one woman who did not want to be on camera because she just said, I'm in work from home mode. My hair is all over the place. And so everyone was laughing, and I said, you probably didn't see the middle finger that just jumped up, because I asked this woman to jump in, and she just went like that. And to me, but it was a friendly gesture. We were joking, but
Yeah.
Anyway, it's all good stuff. All right, I'm losing you on video. There you are. You're back. Okay, you probably got another call coming in. I'm going to let you roll. Let me
Yep.
stop recording here now. I appreciate you. You know that. So I'll see you until next week, right?
Okay.